Hey everyone, this is Renier here, and okay, today we're going to continue analyzing the games from the Capablanca in Memoriam tournament. And here I have a game of one of my favorite players right now. Is a Vietnamese player, Quang Liem. He was unlucky to win the tournament because he lost in the last round against Ivanchuk, a game that he could have drawn at several times, and it was tough luck, but the strength he displayed in this tournament is really beyond his actual rating, I think. Okay, in this game he's played against Liem-Bruzon, who is rated 6 points only more than Quang Liem, and let's see what the game is. They played in a Slav defense. Knight F. Quang Liem is playing white and c4, c6, and I just want to I want to discuss this variation because it's extremely popular nowadays, and I'm sure many of you may play it. Of course, it's the variation featuring in the Avruk famous books of the Grandmaster repertoire. Okay, now Bruzon played bishop f5. Yes, of course, bishop f5 is the main alternative. e6, g6 are possible moves, and bishop g4 is a variation that I consider that deserves special attention, because after the same idea is played, queen b3, queen b6, knight c3, e6, this is pretty much force, then knight h4. White's idea is, of course, to gain the bishop pair by trapping the black's light square bishop by playing h3 and g4, and with that and a central mobile pawns, then he can hope for an advantage. So here bishop h5, h3, and now the latest trend is to take on b3, and after pawn takes, knight a6, and this is a position that is difficult to crack because the knight on b4 will be there forever. It's not easy to remove the knight from b4, and it's annoying. It's kind of annoying. One game went g4, knight b4, threatening knight c2 check, and now if you played rook a4 after bishop g6, knight takes on g6, pawn takes on g6, white has a little bit of a problem here. The threat is, of course, there is no threat, but you cannot play bishop g2 because of knight d3 check, and you have to play something like f3, and suddenly after a5 it seems like black is going to have a solid position. Not easy to find the right plan for white here. Black is going to play b6, a5, b6, bishop e7, and white is a little bit soft in the king side. So perhaps instead of rook a4, king e2 is a better move, and after bishop g6, knight takes, so the bishop can be on this diagonal, even though it's still a tough position. Bishop e7, bishop d2, a5, and rook c1, but at least look a little bit interesting, I think, for white, because there are ideas with knight a4 and knight b6 perhaps. So I think this is one way to play against this variation with white. I have to say that the few games that are with this position is they are all games are draw or better for black, but I think there are too few games, so it's not really relevant. It's a position that is unexplored so far. So let's get back to the main game. After bishop f5, knight c3, e6, and now white can play knight h4 immediately without queen b3. Alright, now bishop e4. This is with the idea of weakening the the king side, the king side pawns, forcing the move f3. An alternative would be bishop g6, and then after knight takes g6, pawn takes c6. White can play many moves in this position. a3 is one of them, with the idea of playing g3 next, and maybe b3, bishop g2. Keep flexible pawns in the center, keep the tension, and castle king side, of course, and fianchetto this bishop on f1 to g2. That's one of the main plans in this position. Also interesting would be queen b3, because it defends c4 at the same time attacks b7, and then when black plays queen c7, then he plays g3 followed by bishop g2 and castle. This is interesting. Kasparov played differently. He played bishop d2, which is also in the spirit of the position. Then after knight bd7, rook c1, a6, bishop d3, bishop e2 I think is also possible. There is no real difference, because I think black's idea is clear. He's going to take on c4, play b5, and then play c5. That's the standard breaking in his position, unless that if he keeps the tension any longer, then white may be able to play c5 and f4. So d takes c4, bishop takes b5, bishop e2, and c5. This was played by Kasparov with the white pieces against Vallejo with black in Linares 2005. Then after bishop f3, rook b8, knight e2, white kept a small advantage because of the bishop pair and the c file. It's difficult to win this type of advantages, but the positive thing is that white has very low risk, so he can always play and keep this edge without risking anything at all. For example, bishop d6, g3, you can see white's position is very, very solid. D takes c5, symmetrical pawn structure plus bishop pair. So after bishop b4, queen b6, knight c3, there are some weakness in the light squares, and after knight b7, white has a superior minor piece, and Kasparov was able to win this position. Even if you're not able to win this position, you can play this forever, and the risk of losing is very, very low. So that's one of the positive things about these variations with white. Okay, but bishop e4 is the move in this position. Okay, bishop g4 doesn't make much sense, because after queen b3 and h3 we get the position with that we have seen before, but only with an extra tempo. So okay, after bishop e4, f3 is forced, bishop g6, and now queen b3, attacking the b7 pawn, at the same time defending c4 in case it's needed. And basically, yeah, white is ready to play bishop d2 and perhaps queenside castle. That's one of the plans in this position for white. So queen c7, not the only way to defend the b7 pawn, also queen b6 is playable. Then after knight takes on g6, pawn takes, bishop d2, knight bd7, white can play either way g3, or he can play g3 is with the idea perhaps king f2 and king g2. That's one of the plans. And also he can try queenside castle immediately, which is doing quite well recently, with the idea of just bishop d3, h3, rook h2, e1, and play for the opening of the center with e4 in the future. Okay, but that's another story. Queen b6. In the game, Bruzon played queen c7, and white played bishop d2. This is all well known since the Avruk books came out. He went with very deep analysis in all this strategy, how white should play these positions to have a comfortable advantage, a small but stable advantage. Grab the bishop from g6 and just stay there in your own territory, waiting for black to play his breaks with c5 or e5, and then gain the advantage of the two bishops when the position is open. That's basically the whole strategy in the position. Now bishop e7, normal move. Knight bd7 is flexible. The bishop can go to d6 or to e7. Then white can try rook c1, or he can try c takes d5. Now that the knight is already on d7, and if black takes with the c pawn, rook c1 will be uncomfortable. So black best idea is possibly to take with the knight, and it's a complicated game. Instead of knight bd7, also a6 has been played, and we have another game by Quang Liem in this position with white. He played rook c1, d takes c4, bishop takes c4, normal, bishop e7, well, not bishop e7, I think knight bd7, yes, a4. This is interesting. This is not very common, and yeah, white prevents b5, and he wants to play e4. That's the idea. After bishop d6, g3, rook b8. Sacrifices on g3, they don't work. So rook b8, and now e4. Knight h5, castle, bishop e7, and knight g2. With a very comfortable game for white, who has more space and better coordinated pieces. Here you can see that black is fighting for bring the bishop on g6 into play. He also doesn't have any central reactions. He played queen b6 in that game, and after bishop e3, things were very easy for white, who has all the space in the world. And the big problem for black is that he doesn't have the normal reactions e5 or c5. They are very difficult to play and not end in a worse position. After knight f6, g4, a6, h4, e5, knight e2, Quang Liem had everything under control and went on to win in just 10 more moves. Very tough position for black. It's very difficult. You can look at the bishop on g6, the kingside pieces, they don't do anything. Taking on d4 will bring a very strong knight to the center. Also the square f4 for the knight on g2. The rook from f is going to d1, and yeah, it's not easy to play with black. Almost, I think it's a lost position. Okay, so bishop e7 is the main line, and after castle, knight bd7, bishop e2, the bishop gets out of the c file, waiting for black to play c5, and of course black shouldn't play c5 then because of knight a4. So knight takes, and then knight e4 with the slight advantage. Also rook fd1 I would consider in this position. This is what Adruk recommends on his book. So yeah, I think rook fd1 is a move that he doesn't mention, but is sensitive, and it just looks natural. Bishop e1 is an idea to bring the bishop to f2 and play e4, for example. But also knight e4, this is the move he mentioned, and yeah, it's good. It looks good. Okay, Bruzon played bishop e7, g3, supporting the knight on h4, but also white is getting ready to take on g6, and then when the h file is open, black doesn't have a threat on h2. That's one of the ideas on g3. Now let's see what Bruzon played. He played a6. This is a standard idea. With the plan is to take on c4 and play b5. Also possible is knight bd7, then c takes d5. Usually white takes on d5 whenever the knight moves on b8. Now, because if taking with the c pawn again, rook c1 is uncomfortable, and taking with the e pawn allows knight takes and queenside castle. You can see that there is no threat on h2, and white is ready to play e4 on the next move, or first king b1, bishop d3, and eventually break the center with e4. If black takes with the knight, well, basically the same thing applies. He can take on g6 and then castle. Same plan, king b1, e4, and use the two bishops. So if black castles, then rook c1 is possible, and after d takes c4, bishop takes, b5, knight takes on g6, takes, and bishop d3. This was played in a game between Karpov. I think no, it was a Backrot with the white pieces. I'm not sure if this. Yeah, I think this was the game, and I'm not so sure if this is the exact position, but it was very similar. Okay, the idea is that when he plays a6, white has to play a4 because the threat is c5. So after a4, white is softening up the king side, putting the queen side, putting some pressure on b5, and the breaking rupture with c6, c5 is not really possible. Knight bd7, king f2, rook fc8, and then take, and king g2 before knight e4 with a small advantage to white. Alright, so a6 played by Bruzon is a standard reaction. It's just normal. And he wants to take on c4, play b5, and then play c5. Rook c1. Okay, normal, standard move, trying to expose the queen on c7, and then d takes on c4. Now knight bd7 is an option. This move has a interrogation mark in Abruk's book, and I'm not so in agreement with this assessment, because after c takes on d5, which is the reason the move is given this mark, this question mark, after knight takes d5, knight takes, e takes d5, Abruk mentions queen takes d5, but this position is not so clear. It looks like white has gained a pawn, but after queen d8, the white queen must go back to e3, bishop takes on h4, queen takes on h4, king e2, and here normally with the queens of the board white will have a clear advantage, but here after castle I believe that black has enough counterplay. One plan is knight f6, queen h5, never mind the pawns on b7 and c6, because with the queen on h5 there will be ideas with bishop e4 or rook e8. Basically I believe that the white king on e2 is a little bit exposed and it could be dangerous. So I suggest instead of taking the pawn on d5, white should just settle for knight takes on g6 and then bishop g2 or e4. Bishop g2 or e4 in this position. Then I think this would be the best. Here probably black can take on h2, but in the end he's losing the b7 pawn and then c6, so I don't think it's a very good deal. So let's go back to move 11 after d takes on c4, bishop takes on c4. Bruzon played now castle. This is a very interesting position. You may be going a little bit confused about this about all the variations I'm giving you here, but it's a very interesting position because you can see how many things white is doing just to gain a small positional advantage, a lasting advantage. You can see I'm very impressed by, well, I'm not a d4 player, so that's why I'm not familiar, but the whole idea of d4, e3, f3, g3, funny pawn structure just impressed me very much, all in order to get to win the g6 bishop and then have the space advantage in the center plus the bishop pair advantage. So it's very interesting and new to me. Okay, instead of castle, knight bd7 has been played, and bishop e2, rook d8, castle, knight takes c6, pawn takes on g6, and now queen c2. This is the type of position I'm talking about even, but no, white has potential, and what black has to be careful with is not to open the position for the white bishops. But white can improve a lot. He can play rook fd1, king g2, bishop e1, e4. It's a very good position for positional play and strategy. So also if instead of castling he goes b5, white can play bishop e2, and after c5 he can take knight bd7. He's threatening now to take on c5, but white has queen d1 with a large advantage because he's going to play b4 and a4, for example. Black cannot take on b4 because of knight takes b5, attacking the queen, attacking the bishop on b4, and after bishop d6, a4 is clearly better for white. Also, if black goes c5, white's reaction will always be the same: to take on c5, knight bd7, take the bishop, and here knight a4, queen a4 check, queen d7, and here you can see the type of position that white wants: two bishops and an endgame in which he can do anything. He can play king, he can play on in the center. He has basically a position with no risk. Okay, Bruzon played castle, and then Quang played castle as well. Very interesting would be knight e2. This is a move that I discovered when I was analyzing the game. Yeah, the idea is not new, but here is interesting because let's say that black plays b5, then white has a very unusual move, that is bishop takes on e6, f takes, knight takes on g6, and now not queen takes on e6 or anything, just knight f4, and he's going to take on e6 with the knight, and that will be to white's advantage. The same would be if black plays knight bd7, then white can just castle and always meet b5 with bishop e6 with the same plan. After pawn takes on e6, it's even worse because now the c6 pawn is hanging as well. White can take on g6 and then take on c6 with the rook. Several pawns for the piece and complete domination, I think. So it would have been interesting to see knight e2. Well, there is a move that you can try, new move in the position. Castle, knight bd7. Now Quang played e4. It's very interesting to see how he always delays the capture on g6, because the bishop becomes very passive. Even if at some point white decides to keep the knight and bring it back to g2, the bishop on g6 remains very, very passive. Now e5 was played. Let's see some interesting variations in this position. For example, if b5, again we have the idea of bishop takes on e6, f takes, knight takes e6, and now queen takes on e6. Well, the only move is rook f7, of course, and now e5. and it's much better for white, because if black moves the knight, then knight d5 seems winning. Black is gonna lose the c6 pawn. g6 pawn is also very weak, not clear at all for black, if he can survive this. So b5 not possible. c5 may be a little better, but then after e5, b5, bishop takes on e6. This is all very interesting as well. c4, knight takes on g6. This is an amazing variation. Now if black takes the queen, white takes on b3, king h8, and then he takes on b3, and he has two bishops and two pawns for the queen, but the advantage is very clear. The knight on f6 has no real good square, and white is going to play knight c to d5, knight c6. His minor pieces, rook on c1, is completely dominating the whole board, so white is definitely better in this position. So he should take on g6, and then bishop takes on c4, b takes on c4, queen c2. Yes, black is a piece up, but look at the knight on f6. There are not very good squares for the knight, because white is going to continue with knight d5 and queen takes c4 with very good compensation for the piece. So after rook f e8, which looks fine, if white takes on f6, bishop takes, black has some counterplay, d5, queen c5, king g2, with complicated position. Of course black is going to regain the pawn, but then remains the weak c4 pawn, and the bishop on c3 could be very powerful. It all remains to be seen in this position. The game is up for grabs, like they say. Would be interesting as well just to not take the piece, just play king g2, and after knight h7, knight d5, queen b7, queen takes c4. White has 3 pawns at this point, and the central pawns are very strong, so I think this is a good compensation for white, but I don't dare to make an evaluation of who's better here. I think it's definitely compensation for the piece. So in the game, Bruzon played e5, and here the game starts to be very interesting from here. D takes on e5, knight takes, and bishop e2. Rook a d8, a normal move, although perhaps b5 was slightly more active with the idea of knight c4. However, after knight takes on g6, f4, this is the plan, to play e5, knight c4. Now if white plays bishop takes on c4, after b takes on c4, queen takes, queen b6 check, king g2, queen takes on b2, perhaps black can have some counterplay, even though after rook f2 white remains better here. Black has weaknesses on c6, and also white has this pawn majority on the king side that is very annoying. One plan is e5 and knight d4. So knight g4, knight d1, very good move to cover the e3 square and also get the queen out of b2. And now rook e2 with the idea of a4 next, and yes, white is still better. But of course, after knight c4, white can also play bishop e1, which looks passive at first sight, but the thing is that white will push the black pieces away. After bishop c5, king h1, only move, knight e3, rook f3, he's playing e5 on the next move, and there is no real counterplay here. The knight on e3 and the bishop on c5, they are all exposed, so it's not really good for black. Bruzon played a more normal move, that is rook d8, then bishop e3. You can see the two bishops here, how they stand controlling all these squares and important diagonals. White is ready to take on g6, play queen c2, rook fd1, then start pushing with f4 and e5. b5. In case of knight e7, anticipating f4, white can take on g6 and then play knight d1. Knight d1 clears the c file, so there is no bishop c5 trading the bishops. He wants to play knight f2 and rook fd1. It looks a very sensitive plan because the knight on f2 defends e4 but also controls g4, so this would kill all kind of counterplay for black, so white remains with an advantage here. b5, knight takes g6, would be the same to play f4 here, knight d3, knight takes, and then rook d1 would transpose to the game. Knight takes g6, and now f4. Knight d3, okay, and now white went rook d1, attacking the knight on d3, forcing black to go knight c5. I have to say, I think here knight g4 does not work because white takes on g4, and when the knight takes, then he has knight d5. The c pawn is pinned. The bishop on e3 is protected by the queen on b3, and white is going to take on c6 on the next move, winning a pawn and consolidating the knight on d5. So knight d3 is forced, then after rook d1 again knight c5 is forced, and now queen c2, and black is facing real problems now. White has ideas of playing e5 or even b4. So what to do? It's not a simple question here. Bruzon played queen c8. Let's see what happens if black plays b4, which I think was slightly more active, but of course it's understandable that the position arising after e5, b takes on c3, e takes on f6, only move to take here, and now if white takes on c3, after knight e4, queen c2, f5, bishop f3, bishop f6, this is unclear. This is not so easy to prove an advantage here. I'm not sure if white has an advantage because his king side is a little bit open. Yes, black has weaknesses on c6 and a6. Also, after he takes on e4, that pawn is very, very weak. But yeah, the white king is open as well. So I'm not sure if black is worse. In my opinion, at first sight, it's very likely that he gets some counterplay. But of course, instead of queen takes on c3, there is b4, which is better because it forces the knight to go to a more passive position after knight e6. And now, well, I didn't consider in the game, but maybe f5 is interesting here. I just considered after queen takes on c3, white stands better. He has the two bishops, c6 pawn, a6 as well, very weak, and the knight is not as active as it was on e4. So yeah, it's understandable that Bruzon didn't go for this. Instead he went queen c8, trying to create counterplay on the king side with knight g4 or queen h3 and knight g4. Bishop f3. Also interesting would be b4, knight e6, queen b3, followed by e5. Most likely white will win in an endgame these type of positions. After rook takes d1, rook d8, e5, knight d5, and now h4, preventing any type of rupture with g5 and also with the idea of bishop f3 next. If black plays queen c4, then bishop f3, d4, bishop d2, and white stands better. One plan could be to bring the king to f2, then play bishop e4, bishop d3, and with the two bishops, yes, it's white who has the advantage. If the queens are off, then he can try to push g4 and f5 at some point. Okay, so, but okay, it's important to see what how Quang Liem plays this position. He first doesn't allow any active play from his opponent. He doesn't go for complicated variations. Actually, his play is very logical, and you can say simple. He plays bishop f3, communicating the queen on the second rank, also defending e4 in case that black plays b4. Queen h3 was played. In case of knight g4, white is not afraid of going back to c1, because after takes, and now knight b7, he can just play e5, check, king f1, knight f2, rook d2, knight g4. You can see that black doesn't have real threats. Now after rook e2, the knight on g4 is very likely to end up on h6, and white is going to play knight e4, dominating the center. So Bruzon played queen h3, and now queen f2, attacking the knight on c5, that is active, and after knight e6, then queen g2, trading black's only active piece. Queen takes, king takes on g2. Okay, we have a position that is going for an endgame, and yes, white has a clear advantage here. Black has weak pawn on c6. Also, black has no domination in the center. He doesn't have comfortable squares for the minor pieces. Bruzon tries to deal with this by playing bishop c5, looking for the d4 square, also to trade one of the bishops that is controlling the board. So, but on top of everything, the problem is the weakness on c6, and also the kingside space that white can gain. He went king f2, normal move. Also, bishop c5 would have been interesting. After knight takes on c5, a3, with the idea of e5 next. But like I said before, Quang Liem doesn't want to allow any counterplay. And here, for example, the problem with a3 is that it weakens b3, and then he cannot play b3 anymore. In case of knight d7, e5, knight b6, black is going to play knight c4, attacking b2 and attacking a3. After b4, knight e6, bishop takes on c6, knight c4, black has counterplay. I think white is better. He can play king f2, and even if he loses the a3 pawn, he can go after the a6 as well, and he has the d5 square for the knight. It's all very pretty, but the thing is that black is active, and in the game he couldn't activate the knights this way. King f2, it looks like the best move. White is still threatening to play e5. Bishop takes on e3. In case of knight d7, it doesn't make any difference. After e5 and b3, it transposes to the game. You can see the difference between playing a3 and b3. Now the knight on b6 has no square. So bishop takes on e3, king takes on e3, knight d7, e5, knight b6, and now b3. Not allowing knight c4. Now Bruzon plays c5. Well, the only question is b4, but in this position, after rook takes d8 and now knight d4, knight d5, black has a strong knight in the center, but he also has a backward pawn on c6 in the open file, so it makes an easy target for white. Let's say knight e7. If knight d4, trying to activate it even more, then white just goes rook c1 followed by rook c4. Not really a solution. So knight e7 is better, but then rook c1, rook d4, and rook c2. Yeah, and in this position, white's idea would be to play knight d6, then bishop e4, king e3, and rook d2. It's a long plan, but I don't see many active moves coming from black, so I think it's possible. It's possible to play this way, and because black has no active plan. That's what I think. Okay, so let's go back. Bruzon plays c5, bishop b7. Good complications start right now. Rook d4, bishop takes on a6, and now b4. Yeah, this was played with the plan of activating the f rook to a8 and gain the pawn on a2. It looks like black is coming out out of the passive position and to start fighting, but then it's not so clear. Quang Liem played knight e2, which is a safe move, but also knight a4 was very good. Perhaps he was afraid of leaving the 2 pawns on the king side and take these double pawns, but I think there is no real danger. After b takes on a4, rook a8, bishop b5. White can even exchange on d4, and after knight takes on d4, rook c1, the advantage is pretty clear. Black cannot take on b5, the endgame is lost. He will play b6 and rook b5. And if he plays knight e6, then h4, king e7, and king e4, followed by g4 and f5. Black will lose material. Okay, again, Quang Liem played knight e2, which is more natural, more human move. But he saw a very strong idea. It's not to underestimate this move. He saw a very strong idea. Rook a8 is logical continuation of the plan. Then bishop b7, rook a7. Well, probably the only move. If black takes on d1, after rook takes, rook a2, then white plays like in the game, rook d6, knight a8, and bishop d5, knight c7, bishop c4, with a complete winning position. Both of the black knights are tied, and then white will play g4 and f5 and rook d7 and will win the game. So in the game, rook a7 first, then bishop e4, and now rook takes d1 and rook takes on a2. So far black saw his position, but white has this very strong move that I think kills the game. I think the game is over after this move. Rook d6, very strong move, and you will see why. Well, the only move is knight c8, only reasonable move. Knight a8, I guess, is not really a move. White can even take, I think, on g6 in case of knight a8. So knight c8, rook d7, and now rook a3. It doesn't help to trade the rooks in case of rook a7, because now the white king just enters in the position, and again g4 and f5 will cause the loss of the c5 pawn and b4. So rook a3, and here is rook b7 with the simple threat of rook b8. Rook takes on b3 check, king f2. Now there is nothing black can do to prevent rook b8. There is only one move, and that move is king h7, getting out of the pin but losing the important f7 pawn. And you will see that now the black king is also in danger. Rook takes on f7. Very strong was bishop d5 as well. Then after rook d3, bishop c4, rook d2, rook takes on f7, the knight on e6 is hanging, and after knight d4, king e3, rook d1, knight takes, and bishop b3, knight b6, e6, and yeah, white should win here. Nothing black can do. Okay, but that's a much more complicated line. Rook takes on f7 is simple and also very strong. Rook b2, king f3, rook b3 check, king g4. Very nice. Now there is one idea. To play bishop d5 is the threat. So rook e3 makes sense, bishop d5, and of course black cannot allow rook takes on e2, bishop takes on e6, because that will lead to mate in a few moves, I think, with rook f8 and bishop g8 coming. If not mate, at least a loss of material. So he goes knight d8, rook f8, and now knight e7. Only move again. If black takes on e2 after bishop g8 check, king h6, bishop c4, white wins, threatening the rook on e2 and also rook h8 mate. Not to mention rook takes d8. So knight e7, only move, bishop c4, knight dc6. Apparently everything under control, controlling g8 square. But now the killing idea is knight g1. Very strong move that is threatening either knight h3 and g5 check, or knight f3 and knight g5 check, and then rook h8 would be checkmate. Bruzon played knight rook e4, and now knight f3, and here black resigns. If instead of rook e4 he goes knight d4, preventing knight f3, then of course white would play knight h3. That's why it's so nice, this idea. You can go either way. And after knight f3, knight g5 again, knight takes, king takes, and black is lost again. Rook e4, bishop f7, c4, rook e8. The knight has to go, and then bishop takes g6 is mate. Play c3, then rook takes on e7, and again bishop takes g6 and rook e8 is mate. So Bruzon played rook e4, and after knight f3, that was it. That's the end of the game. He cannot prevent knight g5 and rook h8. Okay everyone, this is it for now. I hope you enjoyed this game. I think it's a very interesting game from the positional point of view. We see a lot of maneuvering, that endgame without the queens, how active the rook on the d file was. Yeah, there are very important moments to learn from this game. Thanks for watching, and any comments leave it in the forum and I'll be glad to answer them.